What happens when a woman's talent becomes her death sentence? Men not man enough to accept defeat. What happens when fragile egos collide with unchecked pride? On New Year's Eve, 2013, three men faced a woman who outshone them, not in strength, not in power, but in skill and confidence. But instead of applause, her victory ignited something dark and destructive. Jealousy turned into rage, and that rage culminated in one of the most horrific crimes the city has ever witnessed. What should have been a moment of celebration turned into a nightmare, a night where their inability to handle a loss spiraled into unthinkable acts of violence. This wasn't a random crime. This wasn't something that just happened. No, this was deliberate, calculated, and fueled by a toxic mix of jealousy and rage. It wasn't just her talent that threatened them, it was what she represented. Her victory challenged their sense of dominance, and in their minds, she had to be punished. But what drove these men to such extremes? What does it say about a culture where a woman's success can provoke such hatred? And most importantly, how did a night filled with music and laughter become the stage for one of the most horrific crimes this community has ever seen? This is a story that will leave you angry, horrified, and questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Stay with me as we piece together the events of that fateful night, where the cost of victory was far too high. Let's begin. Columbus, Georgia, known for its deep ties to music and culture. On New Year's Eve 2013, the city was alive with celebration. Among the gatherings that night was a buzzing party on Garden Drive, a spot popular with locals looking to ring in the new year with music, energy, and the promise of a fresh start. The air inside the party house was electric. Laughter echoed through crowded rooms, and the pulse of hip-hop beats filled every corner. It was a space where strangers became friends, where the turn of a lyric could win respect, and where the spirit of the night was captured in the art of rap battles. Rap battles, more than just competitions, are cultural showcases. They're where talent meets bravado, and words become weapons. Each performance is a test of creativity, wit, and confidence, drawing crowds eager to witness the unfiltered clash of egos and skill. That night, the Garden Drive party wasn't just a celebration, it was a stage. A stage where reputations were built or broken. But for one woman, her moment of triumph in that rap battle set the stage for something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Tiffany Hill was a name known to many in her community, a woman whose confidence, talent, and love for music made her unforgettable. At just 24 years old, she carried an energy that drew people in, especially in rap culture, where she thrived. Tiffany wasn't just passionate about music, it was her outlet, her way of showing the world who she was. Her life before that night was filled with plans and possibilities. She worked hard to support herself while nurturing her dreams. Her family and friends described her as fiercely independent, always ready to face challenges head-on. She had dreams of becoming a prominent voice in her local rap scene, a space dominated by talent and competition but one where she shone brightly. Tiffany was sociable and warm, the kind of person who could transform a dull moment into a celebration. Whether she was laughing with friends or sharing her latest rhymes, she was a beacon of creativity and determination. On New Year's Eve 2013, Tiffany made the choice to attend a party on Garden Drive. It wasn't something she planned far in advance, just a spontaneous decision to start the year surrounded by music, laughter, and the energy of the people she loved. For Tiffany, it was a chance to unwind, to embrace the moment, and to showcase her talent. But what should have been a joyful start to the year would soon take a terrifying and unexpected turn. Robert Johnson's troubling history began at a young age. By 13, he had already faced a conviction for forcing an 8-year-old girl to perform oral sex. A heinous act that left a lasting mark on his reputation. Those around him described a pattern of increasingly aggressive behavior as he grew older, with his presence often evoking unease. Known for his intimidating demeanor, Robert seemed to thrive on instilling fear in those who crossed his path. Ketery Glover, however, was the outspoken one. With a fiery personality and a track record of unlawful behavior, Ketery was well known in local circles for his assertiveness and volatility. He had a way of commanding attention, but his dominance often came with an edge that could escalate quickly when challenged. People close to him recognized his quick temper as a dangerous trait that made him unpredictable. Joey Guerin, the quietest among the trio, had a different kind of presence. He often stayed in the shadows of his more outspoken counterparts, but his involvement was no less significant. Those who knew Joey described him as someone who carried unresolved frustrations, seeking acceptance through his association with others. This dynamic often made him an accomplice in actions that reflected a shared disregard for boundaries. Together, Robert, Ketery, and Joey represented a dangerous combination. Their shared need to assert control and dominance created an environment where their worst impulses thrived. That night on New Year's Eve, their actions would escalate into a series of events that left a permanent scar on everyone involved. The party on Garden Drive was in full swing. The energy in the room was infectious, a celebration of music, talent, and camaraderie as the crowd gathered for the highlight of the night, the rap battle. Participants stepped up one by one, exchanging rhymes and sharp-edged verses, their words sparking cheers and laughter. The air was alive with excitement, a vibrant mix of competition and creativity where egos were as much a part of the battle as the lyrics themselves. Then it was Tiffany Hill's turn. She stepped forward with confidence, her charisma undeniable. Her sharp wit and lyrical prowess quickly captured the crowd's attention. Line after line, she delivered verses that were clever, biting, and unforgettable, showcasing a talent that clearly outmatched her opponents. The crowd roared with approval as she landed verbal blows that left the others struggling to keep up. For Robert Johnson, Ketery Glover, and Joey Guerin, the celebration began to feel personal. What had started as friendly competition turned into frustration, their pride wounded by Tiffany's commanding presence and undeniable victory. The atmosphere shifted subtly, the cheers of the crowd contrasting sharply with the simmering tension brewing in the minds of the three men. What should have been a triumphant moment for Tiffany was about to take a dark and unexpected turn. What began as a night of celebration quickly descended into horror. After Tiffany Hill's victorious performance, the atmosphere seemed to calm as conversations flowed, laughter filled the air, and music played on. But for Robert Johnson, Ketery Glover, and Joey Guerin, the sting of defeat lingered. They invited Tiffany to continue the freestyle battle inside her car, turning the moment into what seemed like a casual extension of the night's festivities. The four of them sat in the car, rhymes bouncing off the walls as they continued their improvised rap battle. At first, it was just as lively and engaging as before. But the mood shifted when Glover and Johnson suddenly pulled out guns, their words turning to threats. Tiffany's heart raced as she realized the gravity of the situation. Ordered to start driving, she had no choice but to obey. The car's interior, once filled with laughter, now carried an overwhelming silence, broken only by the occasional, chilling commands of her captors. Forced to drive to an abandoned lot on Far Road, Tiffany's fear intensified with every passing second. The isolation of the location amplified her dread. With no one in sight to help, the sense of helplessness was suffocating. At the deserted lot, Tiffany was dragged out of the car at gunpoint. The men barked orders, forcing her to strip under the threat of their weapons. Her mind raced as she grappled with the horror of what was happening, trying to summon the courage to survive. The assault that followed was dehumanizing, a cruel violation that stripped her of more than just her clothing, it was an attack on her very humanity. The perpetrators took turns raping and sexually abusing her, their actions showcasing a level of cruelty that defied comprehension. Using their weapons to further assert their dominance, they inflicted physical and emotional pain that left lasting scars. They treated Tiffany not as a person, but as an object for their control and violence. They had a good old time. They were passing me around like a piece of cake. After the brutal assault, the men attempted to force Tiffany into the trunk of her own car. In a desperate bid for survival, she managed to escape. But her captors were relentless. Gunshots echoed through the night as Johnson and Glover opened fire, hitting Tiffany a staggering 10 times. Despite her injuries, Tiffany's will to live kept her moving. She tried to crawl away, her body fighting against unimaginable pain. As if the violence wasn't enough, the men retrieved a gas can from her car. With chilling precision, they doused her in gasoline and set her ablaze. Flames consumed her as they abandoned her in the lot, leaving her for dead. But Tiffany's strength defied their cruelty. Against all odds, she survived, her determination burning brighter than the flames meant to silence her forever. That night marked the darkest chapter in Tiffany Hill's life, but it was far from the end of her story. Her resilience and fight to survive would set the stage for a relentless pursuit of justice. Tiffany Hill's survival was nothing short of miraculous. Left for dead in an abandoned lot, she summoned every ounce of strength to crawl through the dirt and debris, her body riddled with 10 gunshot wounds and covered in severe burns. Each movement was a fight against the unimaginable pain coursing through her, but she refused to give up. As she crawled toward the faint glimmer of hope, she was discovered by a passerby who immediately called for help. Her will to live had defied the cruel intentions of her attackers. Emergency responders rushed Tiffany to the hospital, where the extent of her injuries became painfully clear. The gunshot wounds alone were life-threatening, but the burns she suffered added another layer of complexity to her recovery. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her condition, performing multiple surgeries to remove bullet fragments and treat her extensive injuries. The road ahead was daunting, a long journey of physical rehabilitation, countless medical procedures, and therapy to cope with the trauma she had endured. Yet, through it all, Tiffany's determination never wavered. With the unwavering support of her family and the medical team by her side, she began the slow and painful process of rebuilding her life. Her survival was not only a testament to her strength but also the spark that would ignite a relentless pursuit of justice. The assault on Tiffany Hill prompted an immediate and intensive investigation by the Columbus Police Department. Leading the charge was Lieutenant Lance Deaton, a seasoned investigator with years of experience in solving violent crimes. Yet, even he described the events of that night as one of the most, if not the most, brutal crimes I've ever encountered. The level of violence and cruelty shocked even the most hardened members of law enforcement. Investigators meticulously combed the crime scene, collecting critical evidence that would later become pivotal in the trial. Bullet casings littered the ground, a gas can was found near the scene, and Tiffany's car bore the telltale signs of the horrors inflicted that night. Forensic analysis tied every piece of evidence to the three men Tiffany had identified: Robert Johnson, Ketery Glover, and Joey Guerin. Despite the overwhelming evidence against them, the defendants clung to a narrative that defied belief. During police interrogations, they claimed that Tiffany had consented to the acts they were accused of. These assertions stood in stark contrast to the physical evidence, Tiffany's testimony, and the heinous nature of their crimes. Their lack of remorse was evident. There was no acknowledgement of the suffering they had caused, only attempts to minimize their culpability and shift blame. With Tiffany's harrowing testimony and the mountain of evidence collected, law enforcement was confident that justice would prevail. The investigation, though painstaking, was a critical step in holding Johnson, Glover, and Guerin accountable for their actions. As the case moved forward, the community stood firmly behind Tiffany, ready to see justice served for the unimaginable pain she had endured. The trial of Robert Johnson, Ketery Glover, and Joey Guerin was a landmark case in Columbus, Georgia, one that captured the attention of the nation. Prosecutor Sadhana Daly led the charge with an unflinching narrative that laid bare the horrors of Tiffany Hill's ordeal. Daly's arguments painted a vivid picture of calculated cruelty, a crime so brutal that it could only be described as pure evil. Daly meticulously walked the jury through the sequence of events that Tiffany had courageously recounted. Her testimony was both heartbreaking and compelling, detailing every moment of the assault with unwavering strength. Forensic experts supported her account, presenting irrefutable evidence, bullet trajectories matching the defendant's weapons, traces of gasoline linking them to the fire, and DNA evidence tying the perpetrators to the crime. Piece by piece, the prosecution dismantled any doubt about the guilt of Johnson, Glover, and Guerin. The defense, however, took a very different approach. Each attorney pleaded with the court to consider their client's supposed remorse, presenting it as a mitigating factor. They pointed to letters of apology and claims of regret made during the trial, attempting to cast their clients as men capable of rehabilitation. Yet these efforts rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming evidence and the defendants' repeated denials of responsibility. The men had claimed that Tiffany had consented to the acts, a narrative contradicted at every turn by the facts of the case. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Art Smith III prepared to deliver his verdict. His remarks were searing, emphasizing the inhumanity of the crime and the enduring trauma inflicted on Tiffany Hill. The testimony in this case was one of the most brutal I have heard in my tenure as a Superior Court judge, Smith said. They treated her as an object. They treated her as disposable. But for her enormous will to live, this might have been a murder case. His words echoed the gravity of the crime and the resilience of its victim. Then came the sentencing. Robert Johnson and Ketery Glover received 6 life sentences each, plus an additional 95 years, ensuring they would never again see the outside world. Joey Guerin, while receiving a slightly lesser sentence, was still handed 5 life sentences and an additional 70 years. The weight of the sentences reflected the court's recognition of the heinous nature of the crime and the need to send a clear message: justice would be served. The conclusion of the trial was a pivotal moment, not just for Tiffany Hill, but for the community that had rallied behind her. Justice had been delivered, and while it could never erase the pain of that night, it affirmed Tiffany's courage and the relentless pursuit of accountability. Tiffany Hill's journey doesn't end with survival, it continues every day as she rebuilds her life. Her physical recovery has been grueling, marked by surgeries and therapy, but the emotional scars run even deeper. How do you move forward after enduring something so unimaginable? How do you find the strength to face each day, knowing what you've survived? These are questions Tiffany answers every day with her courage and the unwavering support of her family. But what about us, as a community and as a society? Are we doing enough to ensure that no one else has to endure what Tiffany went through? How do we create spaces where survivors feel heard, supported, and believed? And what does justice truly look like in cases as devastating as this one? These are questions we must all ask ourselves. The people of Columbus, Georgia, came together in outrage and determination. Vigils, rallies, and public demands for justice became a rallying cry not just for Tiffany, but for every survivor of violence. It forced a conversation about the broader issue of violence against women and the deep-seated need to support those who have endured it. But is this enough? How do we turn outrage into action that creates lasting change? This story asks us to reflect on some of the hardest questions we face as a society. How do we protect the vulnerable? How do we ensure justice for those who have been harmed? And most importantly, how do we prevent such atrocities from happening again? Tiffany Hill's survival is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, but it also reminds us of the darkness that exists in the world. Her fight for justice is an inspiration, but it came at a price that no one should ever have to pay. What can we do to ensure that stories like Tiffany's become a thing of the past? Are we truly doing enough? Thank you for joining us on this journey through a story of survival, resilience, and justice. If this story moved you, consider subscribing to the channel to hear more about others who have defied the odds and fought for justice. Together, we can bring awareness, spark change, and honor those who have endured the unthinkable. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and never stop standing for what's right.